Hey guys, another day, another victory. Today, our Bible verse is going to be coming from Psalms chapter 71, verse 7, and it reads, I am an example to many. You are my strong protection. So, to follow up with what we talked about last week, this week we're literally moving into understanding our purpose. And so, the title of this episode is You Have a Purpose. And I said last week that we were going to be talking a little bit about abortion, and I am sticking by my word with that. And I think it's truly important that we do this, especially with everything going on politically, which I don't know how this has anything to do with politics, but it does. And I think it's important for us to talk about understanding your purpose in life and the purpose of someone else. I feel like the only way we can have a proper conversation about what it means to have a purpose is to know the definition of the word purpose. And it is the reason for which something is done or created or for which something exists. So, throughout this definition, we are going to hyper focus on the word created and having the intentionality behind it. And this is important because if I'm saying you have a purpose, that means you were created for a reason, and everyone is called into being for something, right? And I think with today's Bible verse, people always use that verse in Isaiah that talks about, I've known you in your mother's womb. But I wanted to use Psalms 71, verse 7, because it literally says, I am example to many. So this sticks out to me because I myself could have been aborted because my mom did have me young and she could have decided she didn't want to follow through with that mistake that she made. Because if we're just going to be completely honest, she didn't want to have a child so early. But if she didn't follow through, she wouldn't have been able to be an example for other young mothers out there raising a kid. And I think this is so important because sometimes we don't want to be an example, but we have to be because that may be what God is calling us to do. Um, I think it's clear that I don't agree with abortion, but because I don't agree with it doesn't mean I don't like that person who may feel like they need to abort a baby or have already aborted a baby. The definition of abortion is the deliberate termination of a human pregnancy, most often performed during the first 28 weeks of pregnancy. Um, and then the next one is kind of a little bit harder to read, so I'm just not going to read that on my podcast. But just sticking with the first one being a noun, it's ending a pregnancy. So even the arguments of, oh, it's a fetus, doesn't have a heartbeat yet, or any of that type of stuff, this is going to be a human. And I think that's the part that disgustes me the most about abortion because at the end of the day, we all know that this is going to be a human. It's going to be a full fledged adult that can live and function on their own eventually one day. So to make the argument that right now they're not in that stage, I feel like that's counterfeit because we're not thinking long term as we are for the mother that is supposed to have the child. I know there are many arguments about why abortion should be necessary and a thing to do. And things happen in medicine, right? And sometimes we have to take certain precautions because of something. But I think just deciding to abort a child because you don't want the child, I can't stand behind that at all. Um, and it's because you made the decision to do what you did to bring forth a fetus, right? If we're going to use those terminologies. And it's okay that you did that, but it's also, we have to be responsible and take ownership of our actions. I know that it's easier said than done. But again, guys, I'm talking from a place of almost being that. And if I was aborted, I wouldn't literally be here talking to you guys, having trigger talks, and being able to explain the importance of not aborting a baby because that's the truth. I feel like the main thing that we have to just remember is that an aborted fetus is aborting a baby that could have been alive. Just to add another piece to this puzzle, Sunday at church, we learned about painful obedience. And what a great way to talk about being pregnant out of the circumstances that you don't want. Um, because obviously things have happened that has led to this. And it's obedience and having that child if you reframe your mindset. Like, bad things happen to people all the time. So if we were to talk about not voluntarily, in that action of having a kid, bad things happen. And it's literally because of sin in this world. And it's painful. But the obedience in that is to produce and give fruit, positive fruit, and have that child, because you don't know how they're going to change your life. You don't know how you all will be an example for other people. And that is so important to remember. The three main points we talked about in service was submission, silence, and self-denial. And getting into next week's episode, we're going to be talking about do what thou wilt and what does that really mean. And so, if the main purpose that we all want to have an abortion is because we just want to be able to do what we want to do, we need to rethink that, right? And it's kind of uncomfortable to think about. I mean, because if we really sit here and think about it, I've heard people be like, I don't want to use protection because it just doesn't feel the same. But you are okay if you get pregnant and just end someone else's life for your pleasure. That's interesting. But hey, I am, like I was gonna say, I'm not here to judge, but I'm totally judging if you guys just saw that whole thing. But I'm judging because I'm just like, y'all, like, we don't have to do this. Like, it don't make sense. And I know it may seem like I'm being super insensitive, and I'm not. Because again, I'm literally speaking from being in that position myself. Now, I can't talk about it because I was the person that could have been aborted, but my mom always lets me know every day, every chance she gets, I love you, mom, but how much I was a blessing for her and how much I saved her because God gifted me to her. And there's so many other women like that that I know in my life personally that feel that way about their firstborn that they may have had in an unconventional way. With all that being said, I know that, again, there are medical reasons where a pregnancy has to be terminated because it's just unsafe. And those are hard decisions to make. I'm strictly just speaking from the place of wanting to do it because I have the right and I want to. Um, so just to make that clear, and when I said earlier in the episode about I don't understand how this is political, I genuinely don't understand how this has anything to do with politics because it is about someone's body and their medical history and all of that good stuff. But to refer back to the verse that we read, which again is Psalms chapter 71, verse 7, the first part it says, I am an example to many. But then it says, you are my strong protection. And to any woman out there that has had an abortion, driving to an abortion clinic right now, scheduled one for tomorrow, anything like that, just know that God is still there and He's still with you. He's never left you. So, not even saying still, just know that God is with you. And we all make mistakes in our life. And if you really feel led to do this in your heart, then you have to do what you got to do. But I don't want to encourage that. And that's mainly where I'm coming from in this episode. I don't want to encourage anyone to get an abortion, no matter what, because it is such a blessing and a gift. And again, guys, I've seen this in people that I know, and they love their kid, like they love their first seed. It's normally the first child that usually happens with. I don't want to make any of you guys feel discouraged, but this is me sharing my raw opinion about abortion and why I don't want women to get it, and I don't want women to have this understanding that it will make things easier because again, I know from people in my life, it doesn't. And you're always going to think about it because it's a what if. Just like many other things in our lives, it's a what if. So if you can't leave with anything else, think about that what if, that regret, or I wish I didn't. As I said last week, we do have a new segment called Song of the Week. And this week, the song is Thy Will by Hillary Scott and the Scott Family. Y'all, I danced to this song in one of my summer recitals and it was so fun. And when we did the dance, it was literally about getting pregnant, unplanned, but the fruit that came from it. So listen to that song. And it doesn't even have to be just about abortion in your life. If you have anything going on that you just didn't plan for, listen to that song because God's will is God's will is gonna be done. But if you submit to Him willingly, then it'll be worth your while. And with that being said, guys, always remember, be, stay, and remain encouraged.